She did.
Not yet. All
We'll
right.
have her service.
Hello to
Right,
each
Waco.
of you, all of you who are here present at Colonial Baptist Church, but also we want to welcome those of you who are joining us live on MSBA Facebook. We're glad that you're with us. We know quite a few of you are doing the social distancing thing, and good for you. And many of you are at work, so we just want you to feel welcomed. And we have our guest speaker for at 10 o'clock, and then also at noon today is Art Tennille. Art is working with GuideStone, and he is the regional relationship manager for our state. He lives over in Franklin, and they're members of Brentwood Baptist Church. And then for almost 20 years, he was with Lifeway, and he was one of the ones that were in charge of the transition from the retail stores. And so that was a huge job, Art. Man, our hands go out to you for that responsibility. But this year, he started working with GuideStone, and this has been able to help help get started. And he's here in Tennessee, so he can relate to us. And he has two kids, a brother, or a son, and a daughter, and they live in Franklin. And Art, it's great to have you here with us. We're awesome that you're able to not just be here and speak to us, but you're also having interviews. There's a few interview slots that are still available this afternoon. You call the associational office, and Donna can help you to know which one of those that are available. And so let's go ahead and get started, okay? Lord, thank you so much that you are walking alongside of us, that you are Emmanuel, you are our shepherd. And Lord, we just want to put this time in your hands, Lord. Thank you for Art, that he's with us. Bless his ministry. Bless his time with us. Thank you for his heart for pastors. Thank you for his experience that he's all in with working with pastors and our churches. Thank you that we have a colleague help counsel us about our present and future. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, Brother Art, thank you for being here.
I do appreciate that kind intro, Ron. I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit today, and Mitch and I've had a few times over Zoom, so I've enjoyed those, Mitch, and thank you for the opportunity to, just use what the Lord has placed in me to hopefully help others. That would be my prayer. I thought I would start out a little bit today and just talk a little bit about me and my past, and this is not about me, but just might help you know my heart. I have felt the calling to ministry from actually department store retailing. So I was with Belk for nearly 15 years. I started when I was in high school, and my mama had to drive me to work every day. And I did that for years and had a great career going, and just felt the Lord tugging at me. I didn't know quite at what, and as it turns out, it was to do that retail ministry at Lifeway. And so did that for a number of years until last year, as Ron mentioned, when we had to close all of our stores, and I worked through that process with everybody, helping our team to hopefully end their careers and their time at Lifeway with honor, while at the same time maximizing what we needed to do for Lifeway during that time. But through that whole time period, a passage that was really special to me is Matthew 5:14 through 16. So I wanted to, hope y'all don't mind me reading from my phone here, just a little more convenient. But this passage is very special, and so I vividly remember when I first came to Lifeway, I was a store manager, and so we opened a brand new store in Conyers, Georgia, and I can remember just now sitting down in a circle before we opened the store with my team and talking to them about what the Lord had placed here for us to do. And so this was the scripture for the devotional I gave that very first day with my first team at Lifeway. And as you know, these words, "You are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand. And it gives light for all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father, to the Father in heaven." And so that was how we went about our day at Lifeway every day. We were lights. We were there. We were placed to be a lighthouse. And so that never changed. And then fast forward 15 years, and here I am trying to help shut down all the Lifeway stores and trying to help people see what the Lord might have next for them. And this verse, once again, is what I talked about. I had a meeting, we would talk about, you are the light to the world. And so, yes, we've been lights inside these buildings, these structures, these families called Lifeway stores, but now it's time for us all to go out and find out what the Lord has for us next, and we're going to continue to be light. And so it was a beautiful picture in my mind, and it continues to be that, I think, for a lot of folks, where we ought to be. And so you think about all the Christmas lights we see now, doesn't it make you think about that, about being lights out in the world? And so I encourage our team to do that. And as I began, seeking and searching what the Lord would have for me, I thought I was going to be a local financial planner. That's what I thought I was going to be. My father-in-law had encouraged me that direction for years, began studying that direction, and lo and behold, I had a GuideStone account from years ago when I was on church staff as an administrator in Georgia. And lo and behold, with my work at our church, our home church, Brentwood, I'm on the staff resource team there. The GuideStone person came in. We got to talking, and turns out they were wanting to get closer to churches to help people like Mitch, and help churches around the state and beyond Tennessee perhaps, but to be closer. And so we began talking, and the Lord ended up placing me in this role. I believe it's Him. And through that process, here comes that verse again. I have a little piece of a pamphlet from GuideStone, and I turn over on the back. You are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. And I thought, okay, Lord, this is just your way of saying one more time, I want you here. I want to use you. Dive in and let me do what I'll do with you. And so, I come here humbly today just saying, I'm not the expert, but I'm here to hopefully help us all think about the things we need to be thinking about for the future, and let the Lord plant those seeds in our heart. So, you are the light of the world was a very, very special verse. As I thought about a foundation for today, and I'm not a preacher, so y'all can tell that already, right? And I'm looking into this camera here with all you, whoever's listening out online, you can tell that already. But so appropriate in the retirement planning context is this scripture. So I'm gonna read us another one here. I'm gonna go to Proverbs this time, right? Book of Wisdom, and so I'm going to go to Proverbs 6 and think about the ant. So go to the ant. That's what we're going to talk about here for the next just few minutes. Let's read this. Go to the ant, you slacker, observe its ways, and become wise. Without leader, administrator, or ruler, it prepares its provisions in summer. It gathers its food during the harvest. The ant. So King Solomon wisdom. So thoughts about ants. I remember I grew up in South Georgia, went to a small country church. My parents are still there. My mom the pianist, my dad's the chairman of deacons. We lived out in the country, and so part of my job was cutting the grass, right? Well, many of you probably do that too. And we had a big backyard, and so I would ride this lawnmower. And in South Georgia, the dirt is it okay if I back away from this mic, or is it best to stay up at the mic? But, okay. The dirt is red. It's red clay in South Georgia. And these ant beds that would grow, sometimes they would be, like a foot high. And so I would be on that riding mower, and, you'd hit it, and poof, the dust would come up. Y'all remember doing that. That doesn't happen in my yard in Tennessee for whatever reason. But anyway, you would do that, and sometimes I would stop and go look at that ant bed, and it's just fascinating to look at all those holes and tunnels and and you see all these ants, going all around in that bed. So, they're just extremely disciplined, if you think about an ant. I mean, they really are. They live very orderly, organized lives. They have a leader, they follow, they plan, they do what they're intended to do. I guess you could say they're self-starters. They get up in the morning and they repeat the process over and over and over again. At least it looks like they do to me. I don't really know. But I look down in that bed and I see a lot of action. I see little breadcrumbs, in their mouths. I've seen them come in the house, right? You've seen those trails from the windowsill or whatever, and they'll come over and take that food back out with them. They overcome their obstacles. And if you think about ants, they can get around most anything. They can get through the tiniest of holes. They figure it out. And they persevere again and again and again. So how about us? When you think about us and you compare us to ants, is there any parallels there? I mean, y'all are pastors. You probably have preached this passage many times. You can think of much better illustrations than me, but just think about that a minute. What about us? So observe their ways. Let's talk about that for a minute, and we won't stay too much longer on the ant. Prepare in the growing season. Right, so they prepare in that growing season in the summer. They gather in the fall. And then they're ready when the winter comes, right? They're ready. It didn't happen by accident. Remember, we talked about how disciplined they were, how organized they were, and how preparing they were. And then they were ready. So how does this speak to us? How does this speak to our family finances? In a minute, I promise we're going to get to retirement and planning. So how does that speak to us? Well, it's the same, isn't it? I mean, in the summer, maybe we could say that's the time when we're young. We're building our families. We're building our futures at that point. Even into middle age, we're scurrying around doing all these things, and I think it probably does look and feel like that a lot of times. I know, especially when we had young kids, we scurried a lot. And I don't know, it feels like we still do that to some degree. But in the midst of all the scurry, we should be gathering. That's the point, right? You think about those ants. They look like they're scurrying, and I think they are, but they're gathering in that process. They're using some of their resources, and they're putting a lot of the other ones away because they need to, because they know that winter's coming. Fall. Well, let's think of fall as maybe that last season of vocation. So many of us have come now. I've crossed the 50-yard line. I'm 51 now. Our daughter and our son are both married, and so we're in a different stage. And so maybe you find yourself there, maybe you don't, but you will someday probably, right? And so when you get to fall, hopefully you've been gathering already, but when you get to fall and you look ahead at winter, how can you double down on gathering? How can you really, really pour it in? And so when it comes to retirement planning and thinking, in the fall, I think that's really a time to reassess priorities yet again and think about, am I behind? Because I find when I counsel people, a lot of times we were behind. My wife and I were, and so that's what we're doing. We're really pouring it in now. We've found ways we've made other choices, right, and we're pouring it in. And speaking of choices, we got lots of choices on how to spend our money and our time. And the fact is, we can choose to spend it in the now, and I think the Lord wants us to enjoy life and spend our money on things that help us to have some joy and freedom and helping others and all those things that I'm sure y'all do and agree with. But we have the choice to also put some aside and prepare for winter. And so that's the point here with the ant. We need to be prepared for winter because it's coming in the form of retirement age. It's coming in the time when we need to step aside and let someone else take the mantle. It's coming, and so who's going to prepare for it but us, right? There used to be pensions and all these things that would take care of us if we worked at a company for a long, long time, but now, pretty much anywhere you go, maybe not everywhere, but pretty much anywhere, we, the worker, the ant, the worker, has to decide to put it away. And sometimes that's not as easy as we want it to be, and I understand that. But we've got to make those choices. So go to the ant and plan accordingly. Through the years here in Tennessee, I really do hope to just encourage people to do that, to think ahead and to work ahead. And I'm grateful for the chance to have a chance to do that today. Before we jump into this presentation, let me just lead us in a prayer. Lord, how grateful we are that among so many other things, you are our provider. I mean, there's just no question about it. We can look around, we can look up, we can look inward, and we could see how you provided for us, how you've grown us, and how you've used us when we've allowed you to. And so today we're thankful for the ways that you've done that. We're thankful that you give us opportunities even now to see what we might do. And so that's our prayer today, Lord, to help us see what you want us to do in our own lives so that we can be as much of a blessing as we can to others. And as we move through the seasons of life, maybe summer and summer, maybe summer and winter, or fall, maybe summer already at winter, I don't know, Lord. But as you prepare us for the next one, I pray, Lord, that you'll reveal to us as we take our steps what's next for us and why and how to prepare today for those seasons ahead. Thank you, Lord, so much for this time together, and I pray you'll just be a special blessing on the people in this room and on the internet. Thank you, Lord, in your name. Amen. All right. Are y'all doing okay out there? Yeah. All right. I wish I could see waves online, but I'll wave at you. I hope y'all are all doing okay out there, too, and not falling asleep just yet. I'm going to transition now and move us kind of into our retirement presentation, and I hope y'all can see the screen. Can they see the screen online too? They can? Okay, perfect. All right. Well, Ron, our clicker was working a while ago, wasn't it? Let's try this again.
It's my magnetic personality.
He's pulling it over there. Sorry about that, gentlemen. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, all right, great.
You're waking up.
That's right. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, thank you. So preparing for retirement, are you ready? That's what, and we're gonna talk about several things this morning. We got a little less than an hour here, so I think we're good. And I suspect some of these topics will be less pertinent and interesting to you just from where you are in life, but I suspect some of them will be very thought-provoking and interesting for you. So as we go through, just know that some of these may be more important than those. We're going to talk about what retirement's looking like these days for people. Take a little bit of the lid off and look down at planning. Think about the ants. So what are the different ways and things we need to be thinking about and plan? What can we control? What can't we control? We'll look at some checkpoints. So different ones of us are at different ages. And so what do we need to be thinking about at our checkpoint? And so that's what that'll be. Some of us are closer than others to when we're getting ready to take money out of GuideStone, right? And so, or our other retirement plan. And so what's our strategy there? What are our options there? And then for some of us, what is this 403B thing? I've never contributed. So what is that? How does it work? We'll talk through that. I want to talk a little bit about the Tennessee Baptist Mission Board and their state convention protection benefits that they provide through the retirement. Talk about that as well. So let's jump right in. So retirement, it really is changing. I think most of y'all would agree with that. I think about my grandparents and the way they retired. It was a great retirement. Don't get me wrong. It was a real simple retirement, and I loved being with them during their retirement. I would go over after school a lot of times and just spend a lot of time there. And then I think about how are people retiring today, or how do people think maybe they want to retire? And it's probably different than what people used to think about when they thought about retirement. And I guess the biggest thing is most people want to retire with a similar standard of living than they've gotten used to. I think that's at least the American mindset today, right or wrong. Doesn't have to be that way, but I think most people probably think that way. And so let's look at these. I mean, people are living longer. We'll look a little bit further into that in a minute. In some cases, they're working longer, so that's happening out there, right? People are retiring differently, and we'll jump into that here in a minute. And then some people are retiring early. Point is, it's not just about the money. There's a lot of different things there that people are thinking about today. So living longer kind of amazes me when you take a look at this chart. So I'll let you digest it for just a minute. The green is the chance that at least one person in the marriage lives to that specific age. So there's a 97% chance now that in the average couple that one of them will live to age 75. There's a 90% chance to 80. There's a 49% that at least one will live to 90. And there's a 23% chance that just one or 34% that the women will live. So whether we want to retire differently or not, the fact is we're living longer. And so that retirement nest egg doesn't need to last us 15 years, 10 years, right? It probably needs to be there for 30 years, probably. Think about it. So people are living longer, and we got to be getting ready for that. Does that surprise anybody? I don't know. It surprised me when I first saw that chart, but maybe I was just in the dark. I don't know. I'm not old. Okay.
That's the answer.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. So working longer. So the number of older individuals on the job is rising. Healthy individuals age 65 and older are working longer. So why do you think they're working longer? Well, for some people, it is a matter of they want to, right? I suspect there's some of you in this room that want to. I mean, you just have no desire to stop. You love what you're doing. You feel like, and from the counsel of others, you're hearing that you're effective at what you do. And so you're wanting to just work longer. So that's part of the game. Some people desire to. The other piece of that, and I see this quite a bit too, is people are working longer because they have to work longer. They look ahead at what they have set aside, what they brought in during the summer and in the fall, and now winter is here. It's a little cold outside, but they've got to keep working because they just haven't saved up enough, right? So some people are doing it because of that. And then retiring differently. This is kind of what I was starting out to say a minute ago about my grandparents. So they did some of this, but maybe not a lot of it. But if you think about your picture, I mean, just kind of fast forward, and for some of you, it's not as far down the road. And I look at some of us, and we're further out. I'm closer than you probably. But what's your picture? And maybe it includes some of this. I mean, maybe it includes a lot of things with the family, like being close to help them. Maybe it includes taking the grandkids on a special trip to the Grand Canyon. I know my parents did that for our kids, and they had to save up for that, right? Travel as a couple or as a family. A lot of people want to volunteer, and one of the things I often will plant a seed in someone's mind when I'm looking at their balance and helping them think about the future is, okay, God has resourced you here, right, through the years. I mean, you've been diligent, you've been part of that, but God has resourced you. So I wonder what He wants to do with you when you cross the finish line for retirement later. What does He want to use these resources for? Maybe He wants you just to do the family and the travel things, but He might have some other things in mind, too, to help people. So people are volunteering, as you know. Mission trips, right? Perfect thing for us in this room. And then hobbies. People have their hobbies and they want to do those, but they typically do require some resources. So people are retiring differently. Well, this is an interesting statistic too in light of the other we just said. So 69% of current workers expect to retire at age 65. So most of us think we're going to work till age 65. But check that out. Does that surprise anybody? Only 31% stay in the workforce until then. I kind of had this picture in my mind that probably 2/3 of us stayed in the workforce till then, but apparently only 31% of us do. So retiring early, sometimes, maybe things change and we decide we want to do that. Kind of like the thing about working longer. Same could be on retiring early. Maybe I want to. I've resourced myself. I've found a way. I'm going to retire early. But some people do it because of health issues or disabilities, and so that happens to some folks unexpectedly. So we want to be having that in our head because we just kind of need to be preparing for those things. Okay, so retirement is looking different these days. That's our point there. So let's talk about planning for a little bit. We're going to hit several topics here, but think about those ants. So how do we get ready? What are the things we need to be thinking about? How to prepare. All right, so as we do, there's, and I apologize, I'm not looking into this camera nearly enough, but I hope y'all can see and know that I'm really thinking about you out there. There are a lot of ways we can prepare and should be thinking about as we prepare. But we probably need to focus our efforts more on the things we can control than the things that are out of our control. Because if we spend a lot of energy on those things that we can't control, it's sort of wasted energy. It's good to be cognizant that those things are out there because they will affect our outcomes sometimes. But as far as us being able to make an impact on them, maybe not. So in our control, and we're going to talk about each one of these: savings, Social Security is another one, right? We can decide how much we save. We can decide when we take Social Security. Insurance, we can determine how much of that we're going to have and what's appropriate. Budgeting, boy, a big one there. Asset allocation, all those are in our control. Partial control, how long we work, and if we're going to work part-time in retirement. But outside of our control, how long we live, only the Lord knows that. Right? We might be one of those that makes it all the way to 90, but we might not be. Inflation, it's pretty tame today, but we don't know what it'll be 5 years from now, for example. Policy, governmental changes, market returns, economy. All right, so let's break these down a little bit. So what's in our control? What is in our control? Savings, first one. This is probably, I'm going to say this is the most important slide of the day. I'll just say that. I think this is the most important slide of the day. It is in our control. And most financial planners will say that if we want to end up living with about the same standard of living that we had pre-retirement, we need to plan on replacing about 70 to 90% of our income. By the way, that takes about, most of them will also say, 8 to 10 times your salary of your last year of work in order to have a nest egg that will spin off enough for you to do that. It takes about 8 to 10 times your salary in your last year of work in order to do that. So that's kind of what you're working toward. But the more practical goal there and how to get there is for those of us who start early and save through our life, it's saving 15% through the course of our working life. So if my church is putting in a portion into my account, maybe they put in 5%, we'll say. Well, that leaves me 10. Well, if the church puts in 10, that would leave me 5, and so forth, right? Or some churches may do a match. Whatever it is, but the combination of what I do and my employer does, of course this goes well beyond the church. Anybody saving for retirement needs to be about 15% over the course of life. If I start later, naturally, I got to save more than that. So I might, if I didn't start till my 30s, I may have to up that 5% or so. I told you already that Ruth and I were late started. We were saving a little bit when we were young, not enough, and so we're trying to catch up. And so if we didn't start out, we probably have to do more to catch up. And then if any of you have happened to opt out of Social Security, then you don't have that big portion of your retirement income stream that a lot of people do. 25 to 40% of most people's planned retirement income stream is Social Security. So if you happen to have opted out, then you got more savings to do. Again, if you don't put it away like the ant, who's going to put it away for you, right? So very, very important. So 15%, probably the biggest principle we can take away. I know many of y'all are further along in life and you've been saving, but if there's some of you out there that are just getting started, really, really think about that and know that in your retirement plan at GuideStone with the church, you can make a change anytime. You don't have to wait for annual enrollment. You can increase your contribution anytime you want to. So if you figure out a way to get 1 or 2 more % today, it's better to save it today than a year from now because of compounding, right? So start somewhere and move along. We'll come back to that. So savings. Here are some checkpoints. These are just real general rules of thumb. So don't necessarily quote take these to the bank, but let me just show you how to read the chart. So if your household income, say, is $50,000, and you're about age 50, you multiply 50 times 3.1 to say, this is about what my retirement balance ought to be today. Again, this is if I want to live with about the same income that I have today in retirement. So if my household income is 70 and I'm 60 years old, 70 times about 6, what would that be, 420, I guess? That's kind of how the math works there. So I'll give you a second to take a look at that chart and just kind of do a little personal checkpoint in your mind.
So, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So is that based on estimated retiring age?
At your normal retirement age.
Okay,
Yeah.
60,
Yeah, you're
7.
yeah, 67 now for most of us. Yeah, but yeah. Yes, sir.
What is it if you're making $200,000 a year?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure glad to know you are. I know. I needed to move that chart over. We'll make a note for the next session. Okay. Thank you.
What time is your appointment? Around Brentwood, Nashville, you'll leave that.
Okay, that's a possibility. Yeah. Okay. All right. So take a look at this. This is going to be a little bit hard to read on this screen, isn't it? Let's see if I can get closer here. I'm gonna walk across. So $200 invested and saved monthly. So you got this one person at age 25 who started saving. I can't even read it myself. I know y'all can't read it.
That first one looks like 25 from here.
Yeah, at age 25, that's right. So I'm starting at age 25, and I'm earning a couple percent. And I can't read the number there, but the point being, I don't ever increase. Yeah, I can't read it. I can't read it. I think I may have it here. Yeah, that's a good point. So investing from age 25 to 65 in cash, earning 2%. So that's this line here. I'll just point it. That's the gray line there. The blue line is Quitter Quincy. So he invested from 25 to 35, earning 6%. So he stopped, but he was earning 6% because he was invested probably more appropriately for early in life. So he actually outpaced Nervous Noah. That's what the gray line was. Late Lila, the orange line, she invested from 25 to 65, 35 to 65. So she waited a year, earning 6%. And so she didn't start till age 35, and she ended up beating them just a little bit. But consistent Chloe, the green line, she invested from 25 to age 65, earning 6%. Which is pretty conservative, right, for the market over all those years. She earned $96,000. So the point is, we have to start early if we want to really maximize, and we have to be consistent about it. And I was talking to I think the young lady was 28 years old. Maybe she was a little less than that at a church last week, and I said, if you just start now, just let compounding do its magic for you. Magic, and not in that kind of sense, but let it do its work for you, and you'll never regret it. You'll never miss it if you start now, right? Because it's already coming out of your check, and that's the value of that. I'm sorry about the slide. Legible there. So we'll move on from savings. So the other thing we can control is Social Security. First of all, being eligible for it, right? Hopefully we haven't opted out. How are benefits calculated? Just in general, remember it's based on your 35 years and your highest earning 35 years. And it depends on when you retire, right? We'll see that on the next slide. If you retire early and start taking benefits early, or if you wait until a little bit later. Your normal retirement age is, depends on different birthdays in the room here. Maybe it ranges from 65 to 67. And then we said earlier that Social Security is going to replace about 25 to 40% of the income that we need replacing. So it's not all of what we need, but it's certainly a big chunk of it. If you haven't gone out to SSA.gov, and gotten an estimate of your Social Security, it would be a really wise thing to do, no matter your age. You can sign up for a login, and they'll send you an email. In fact, my wife just got hers this past weekend. You'll get an email once a year, once they've updated your amount, and it's just a good reminder to click it and kind of see where you're tracking, because you'll want to know that amount, because that's one of your big pieces of income stream. But the average benefit for a single person is $18,000 a year. Average for a married couple is $30,000 a year. That's just an average, right? So, receive added benefits for waiting, is what it says there, right? So if we retire early at age 62, they're going to reduce your benefit for every year early by about 6.25%. So you can start getting it early, but that's basically what they do, reduce your full Social Security benefit by about 6.25% from your full retirement age, whatever that is. But if you can wait, if you don't need to start taking it, and again, all this it's the puzzle, right? You've got to put this math puzzle together when you start getting ready to do this. You can wait, and it goes up 8% for 4 years to a maximum of 132% of what your full retirement Social Security is. So if you want to wait, they're going to give you quite a big raise for when you start. So those are our options. And again, you just kind of got to think it through with some advisors in your life and think through. Insurance. I'm not the Social Security expert, and I'm not the insurance and Medicare expert either, but here's the point. There are several parts of Medicare, A, B, C, D. Probably many of y'all in the room know those terms better than I do. But one key thing is, as soon as you get to age 65, you want to be sure to enroll in Part A, because that's where you get your medical coverage. Even if you're still covered under major medical, you don't want to miss the window. They have this window about registering. So be sure to register in Medicare Part A. And then there's supplemental medical and medical advantage plans, and GuideStone has many of those plans. You probably can get those elsewhere as well. But if you have any questions about insurance, I would just encourage you to call the insurance line at GuideStone. They'll be very helpful to you. Call anytime with any questions. But it's one thing that is in your control. Again, right, we're talking about the things in our control. So we can plan to have insurance and use it properly. Okay, budgeting. Another pretty favorite topic here, but not a fun topic necessarily. But let's think about this for a minute. In your control is budgeting. And so the first thing we gotta just be sure we're doing is creating one. Again, my father-in-law was he was a stickler about this. We read early. Y'all remember Larry Burkett back in the day? We used to read all of his books, and so I'm thankful to Larry for helping Ruth and me. She lived outside of Atlanta. He was in, I think, Gainesville, Georgia, and so he taught us how to do a budget and try to do it well. And we haven't done it perfectly every year, nor have we lived perfectly by one every year. But it really, really has been a guiding force in life for us. And it really helps us. I live really close to Dave Ramsey's office. And so we listen to Dave on the radio. And I love the way he says it. It's so simple. He says, give every dollar a job. And that's just, nobody has ever said it quite that simply than Dave. Give every dollar a job. And so I've got all this much income coming in, and I've got these things I can spend it on. And so let me write down my essentials, and let me start adding in the things that I'd like to do, and some more things I might want to do. And it can become apparent right quick when you do a budget that you're spending a lot more on that one thing, whatever that one thing is, than you thought. Maybe it's that hobby, or maybe it's eating out. Oftentimes it's those. And so it can be sort of an eye-opener. And so you say, well, there's, maybe you're thinking, I wish I could save a little bit more for retirement. Well, doing that budget, before you give your dollars a job, you'll see what job each dollar's been doing. And then you, as the manager, the financial manager of your house, you and your spouse can say, okay, that's the job we've been given these dollars, but I think I'd rather give this portion of the dollars, this job, and that is getting us ready for retirement. And so you become, it's almost freeing in a way, right? Once you realize what you're doing there and you make those decisions, and then it feels good. It feels good. So you can't really do it without a budget. And you don't have to be super scientific about it. You can be. You can use software and you can monitor every expense, but you can do it very simply on paper, envelope system. Y'all have heard about that, but having a budget is a really, really big help. So I encourage you to do that. Paying off debt is another big one. If we're spending money on, mortgage is a little bit of a different animal, but most any other debt, the interest rate is high. It's money that the bank is earning. It's money that we spent before we had it. And if we can just get on this cycle of paying that off and then saving up for the next thing. So in that budget, I'm going to create an emergency fund, hopefully, right? And then I'm going to try to create a fund for my next big expense, whether it's the washing machine or the air conditioner that breaks, or whether it's when it's time for another car. So I kind of pay myself into another bucket. Some people like to open another account so that it's moved over and it's out of the way of the checking account. And then that money's there to use for the next big purchase. And I don't go out and take out another loan and go into debt, because we know that the debtor is slave to the lender, right? And it's just the way it works. And then the last thing there is pretty self-explanatory, right? Spending less than we earn. I mean, that's how you do it. There's no way to save money if we're spending more than we earn, unless people are giving you money. maybe they will be, but I can't see a way to spend more than I earn and to save anything. So that has to be a discipline. And we talked about how disciplined those ants are. And so we can be. We really are. We're built to be that way. But we have to make a conscious choice, because while we're built to be that way, our nature is not that way. Speaking for me, right? Okay, just speaking for me. I must have stayed too long on that one, y'all. Okay, so if you're working on your budget, here's just some general percentages of how much should go to what, right? So about half goes to essential expenses. It's going to take about half for those, and that for us includes tithe, right? That's what that little symbol means for us. So our tithe, our housing, our groceries, our utilities, right? About half of our budget ought to be devoted to that. So when you're looking at what are my dollars doing, if you're more than half there, it might mean you're out of kilter on one of those. So about half, about 30% for, well, let's go up here first. 20% for savings. So we got to be saving for emergencies, and we got to be saving for our future and our retirement. So it takes about 20% of our budget to fund that. We said we need about 15% for retirement, but we got to get that emergency fund funded and keep it funded, and then we've got to save for those expenses, and we save, and then we might be able to stop when we get that fund up to a certain amount and use those dollars for something else. And then when we spend it, we may have to save again. But over the course of life, it's probably going to take about 20% for those. And then 30%, that leaves us 30% for the choices we want to make, right? The non-essential things, the eating out, the trips to the Grand Canyon or to, wherever it is we like to go. And then entertainment, whether that's movies or going to the symphony or whatever you like to do. So about 30%. Is that helpful? Just a little bit of perspective, maybe? Okay. Any questions on that part right there before I turn the page?
And I assume when you speak of savings, you're including our GuideStone or whatever we're putting in for the time.
That's right.
Including into a savings account, all that's in the same.
All that. That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yes, sir.
Would that include investing also?
Well, investing in a way is like saving. So once you could take some out of here for that, but this is like essential savings. Essential for the next purchase, essential for the emergency fund, essential for retirement. So you could go over and above, but I don't know that you'll get it out of that 20. You might after you fund that, let's say you saved up another $20,000 for the next car, and so that account is quote full, well then I might could use that to go and invest in non-retirement investments. Is that what you're asking, non-retirement? Yeah. But otherwise it may have to come from over here for a while. All right, well, let's turn the page on investment asset allocation. After lunch, by the way, we're going to talk more about the market and about being properly invested through life and through the market, but we'll hit on it here a pretty good bit, so I'm not sure if all of y'all will be back after lunch or not, but being properly diversified in your retirement account is super important because you think about not every stock goes up on the same day, typically, right? And when a bad thing happens at company A, it's not necessarily happening at company B. So, and the same thing between stocks and bonds. So being properly diversified among asset classes and, of course, having the right proportion of different asset classes through life is really important. Now, that didn't sound very helpful. So let me see if I can be a little more practical here. So if you think about it, the things that would determine how we need to be diversified is our time horizon. So how long do I have before retirement? Is it 20 years? Is it 30 years? Is it 3 years, right? How long is that time horizon? Typically, the longer the horizon, the more risk I can afford to take, right? Because we know the market, it's a roller coaster, right? It goes up and it goes down. It just does. And we don't know what the future holds, granted, but what it has always held is the market goes like this, but it's on this upward trend, right? It comes down and it goes back up even higher given time. And so when you get close to retirement, if you're within that short window and you have one of those big dips, you just don't have as much time to recover. So at that point, a more conservative portfolio is usually the better idea, right? You just got to do what's right for you. And so time horizon is a big, big factor, if not one of the biggest. The next one is risk tolerance. There's some people that can tolerate more risk than others at various stages in life. And the way I say it to most people is you've got to be able to sleep at night. You and your spouse have to be able to sleep at night based on how you have it invested at this stage in your life. And so regardless of your time horizon, but within it, what is your risk tolerance, right? And only you can answer that. And it probably changes. You may have different situations in life and you say, you know what, I did, but now I don't. I was willing to and now I'm not. I take this level of risk. And so it's a personal decision based on what's going on in your life. And then part of that is your individual retirement goals. What are your goals? And do you have other investments or do you have other income sources that might allow you to take more risk or might keep you from taking more risk in your mind? Does that make sense? So those are the things that go into your proper asset allocation. And so at GuideStone, there's really 3 approaches that you can take in investing and in staying properly diversified. And we'll just take a peek at each of these right now. The first one is kind of a target approach. And I'll call this, say, do it for me. This would be the do it for me approach, right? So if you think about it, early in life, we want to be, we can take more risk usually, right? We're further out. Our time horizon's further out. So if you take a look at this chart, so a target date fund is one way. You've got in our early years here, in our 20s and 30s, all blue there, which means that that person may be almost entirely in stocks, equities, right? But then as they begin to age, typically fixed income or bonds typically are introduced into the portfolio. So that by the time we get to retirement, it's sort of flipped, right? We've got mostly fixed income, bonds type investments, and just a little bit in the stock market, keeping us ahead of inflation there, hopefully. So the best picture for me of a target date fund is like an airplane. So I live in the flight path, good or bad, of Nashville's airport. Not close to the airport, but they fly over our house, the Southwest jets. And so I think about the target date funds very much like those Southwest jets. You know, they're all headed to B and A, but this one is ahead of this one, and it's already a little bit lower, right, as they're coming in. And so that's what a target date fund does. It keeps us highly invested in more so in stocks when we're young, this high altitude, and then as we age, it just gradually brings the plane down. It's just gradually, ever so gradually each year. And so a person who chooses a target date fund doesn't have to make any of those adjustments themselves. The target date fund does it for you. So that's why a lot of people choose that. Maybe they don't understand how, maybe they don't have the time, maybe they just don't want to. Whatever the case is, that's what a target date fund does for you. There's another one here called Target Risk Fund, and this is it's a similar idea, meaning you don't have to choose all of your stock funds. You can just pick from among a fund that's aggressive or growth or moderate or conservative, but it's fixed. So you choose your risk level and you move it when you feel like it's appropriate through life. And so this one is the glide path. It's moving for you ever so slightly every year. This one, let's just say I chose this one today. My money's going to stay just like that. Maybe different companies, maybe different, but it's going to all be aggressive until I push a button or call GuideStone and say, hey, move some of that money to something else, right? So that's where you make the choice. So that's the do-it-for-me approach. Some say, you know what, I want to do it myself. I want to pick and choose among all the funds. So GuideStone has a full lineup of mutual funds, right? You've seen them, the growth, U.S. growth funds, international, emerging markets, medium duration bonds, real estate investments, all those funds. And so you think of that kind of like each one of those kind of like a Lego block, right? And so you're going to build your own portfolio with your own risk level. And that's what that's just showing you. So some people want to do that themselves. They'll say, I'll figure out among these funds, I'm going to put 20% in this one and 10% in this one and 30% in this one. And then every year or so, I'm going to come back in here, reassess my time horizon, my tolerance for risk, and what my goals are now based on what's happening in life, and I might rearrange these blocks a little bit, right? So that's the do-it-for-me approach. The interesting thing is these building blocks are inside these funds here. So, this is like a one-fund approach. This one would be, you might call it a multiple fund approach, where you're picking and choosing among the funds. Does that make sense? Okay, so some of you do it one way probably, and some of you probably do it the other way in the room. But either of those can keep you properly invested. You just have to be engaged in making conscious choices to keep yourself properly invested, because that's the important thing, right? Is staying properly invested through life. The last one is sort of a do-it-together approach, and this one at GuideStone at least is new in the more recent years. So GuideStone has personal financial advisors on staff in Dallas. Typically, might be for someone further along in life with maybe more at stake, maybe higher balances, although some others might want that too. But this is a team of people who will, I like to say, kind of hold your hand through life. That's what they are. They're an advisor. They're certified financial planners, and so they'll help you with investment choices, thinking about the future, financial planning, budgeting. Some people even give them discretionary authority to trade their account. So, once they know who you are and know all those things about you, your risk tolerance, your goals, all those things, you could say, okay, given that, they even kind of call it like a risk limit or a speed limit. Once they know your speed limit, if we can say it that way, then they'll know how to invest for you during this time, in this season of life, and they'll do it for you. So that is an add-on service at GuideStone, but if anybody's ever interested in that, I can refer you to that team. They'll do a consultation with you, and y'all can determine if that's right. But that is another way to do it, sort of this together approach. All right. Good to move along here? All right. Out of your control, remember we said need to be aware of these. We can't change them. We just need to be aware of them. Longevity. You might live a long time. Got to be aware of that. We might. I think we've already looked at some of those statistics. We'll move on. Okay, inflation. Let's think about this. I thought that this chart's pretty interesting. Some of y'all will like it a lot. This only goes back to 1980, but I'm still having a hard time remembering that. The average automobile was $6,900. Was it in 1980? I guess it was. I guess. And now it's right at $40,000 probably this year. But, yeah, interesting. The average price, the median price of a new home, look at that, y'all, $76,000 versus $330,000. anyway, we know inflation is low today. We've seen what's happened this year and what the Fed has done, and we'll talk a little bit about the Fed after lunch. But inflation has typically been there, and so when we think about what are we going to need in the future, that's why it's important to save, thinking about your last year of work, not today's salaries. And also, that's why some people choose to put a dollar figure into their retirement account. I'll put in $100 a month, or I'll put in $250 a month, and they let that ride, because I encourage you, do let it ride, right? Let it just continue on. But as our pay increases through the decades, if we're just stuck at that 250, we might be in trouble when we get to retirement. So it's good to do it a percentage. Figure what that 250 of your salary would be today, and put in that percentage when you turn in your form to the office. And then when you get a raise, assuming you get a raise, right, then your contribution might go up from 250 to what, 268 or something like that. It'll just keep going up each year to keep you protected against inflation. Of course, being properly invested is all about being protected against inflation too. Yeah. Other factors, policy and government changes. I don't know what the government's going to do, right? Goodness gracious, we just don't know. What will taxes be 3 years from now, 2 years from now? Maybe the same. There's a lot of political things going on out there right now. Maybe they will be the same. Maybe taxes will go up. Maybe they could go down. I don't know. It is out of our control.
You said maybe they could go down?
Maybe they could. Yeah.
Not in my
Yeah.
life.
I don't know. Earlier in the year, I might have thought there might be less stability there, but if they're saying now, if the Senate stays with one party and the rest of the government is with the other party, that maybe there's a nice balance and it kind of keeps more stability. I don't know. I just don't know. That's the point. So we can't predict it. We just need to be aware that those things are out there. Same thing with Social Security. We don't know what could change about that in the future. There was a lot of predictions about Social Security won't be here. I don't really hear people saying that. I hear people saying things like, well, they could reduce it a little bit or extend the age again or those kinds of things. But I'm not hearing a lot of rumble about it going away. Probably would be pretty a rough political thing to do to get rid of it. Market returns, can't predict that for sure. And the economy, we sure can't predict. What's partially in our control? We said this earlier. We can partly control our working timeline. So if I were talking to you as an individual and you're looking to retire and you feel like you're a little behind, I typically say this because I really think this boils it down pretty well. You got 3 levers sitting in front of you that you can pull. You can pull this lever that says, I'm going to work longer. If the Lord allows you to, right? I can pull that lever. I'll pull this lever that says, I'm going to get me a part-time job in retirement. I'm going to, do a little bit of saving and a little bit of working. Or I can pull this lever that save more now. Or, like the pilot, I can pull multiple levers. So to me, that just makes it simple as I'm thinking about the future. What are my choices? And seriously, I have to think about this for myself too. Which of those do I want to do? So we do control our working timeline to some degree. There are times when we don't, obviously. So some checkpoints. Let's just kind of look at ourselves here and see where we are and what we might want to be thinking about based on our age. Obviously, in our 20s and 30s and 40s, it's all about building. It's all about growing, saving, setting up these automatic savings so they just keep going, just like that chart we couldn't read a while ago. Just like that. So it just happens, right? It happens. Not out of randomness or chance, but because we took an action way back here. And that action just kept on paying forward, right? So that's 20s and 30s and 40s. But when we get to our 50s, we're faced with this, and y'all heard me say this is me right here. Increase my contributions if I'm behind, right? So that's the spot to kind of take a look. How am I? I can see retirement out there. I think I can read the sign that says retirement, ahead of me. I'm 50 now, right? And so I need to look and see, do I need to increase my contributions or plan one of those other levers? Organize my assets. A lot of people at this point in life say, you know what, I want to organize my assets. I've got this account over here, I've got this account over here. Some people choose to consolidate. This is a good time to do estate planning and those kinds of things, thinking about the future. So 50s. 60s, if you haven't looked at your asset allocation in a while, which we were just talking about that a few minutes ago, it's a good time to review it and be sure you're still on track to where you want to be and consistent with your goals, objectives, your risk tolerance, and what you want to do in life. If you're in a target date fund, that's been happening for you. But if you're not, do you need to review it and just take a look and make good choices with the money you have already saved up there? You can start considering your Social Security options. You know, am I going to start early, or am I going to go normal or later? And planning for retirement income. What is my income going to be? Better get on that budget, right? And at 65, I want to enroll in Medicare Part A. And then in the 70s, we can begin to, if we hadn't already, access Social Security benefits. And then, do y'all know the RMD age, required minimum distribution, it changed this year. Used to be 70 and a half, but now the law has changed to 72. So you don't have to start taking out your retirement savings until age 72. Many of us are going to need to take it out before then, but some who don't can let it continue to grow till age 72. But then Uncle Sam wants to get a little bit of taxes, so you're going to have to start taking it out. Yes, sir.
I have a question at this point.
Okay.
It was my understanding on the old rules, and I think it's true still, that if you choose to stay engaged in ministry after your retirement age comes, that the GuideStone can allow you to continue to live. You don't have to draw your retirement. In other words, if you work to 75,
Yes.
you don't have to draw your retirement, but you have to be working in ministry.
Yeah, if you're still working at the church, the same employer there, you can typically delay that withdrawal. That's right. Yeah, and I think there are some exceptions to that, and so I don't want to say for sure, but yes, you're right. If you're still working for the same employer, then as far as I know, you don't have to start taking those withdrawals.
Those things, those retirement funds are things that are accumulated tax deferred that are not related to your ministry, for instance, something else.
Right. So you haven't.
That's got to abide.
Yes.
But
Right.
the ministry-related retirement fund can continue to grow and stay unaffected as long as you're in the ministry. That's my understanding.
Right, and it could be that if you were employed by a company who offered a 401k or 403b, and you're still employed at that company, the same may apply there too. But if you have an account sitting over here like an IRA related to some previous employment, yes, I think that's right. The 72 still applies. But of course, in any individual situation, you'd want to check with your provider or GuideStone at that time, just be sure. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about, we want to start taking some money out. What's our strategy? What do we need to be thinking about? How does this work? Do I have options or what, right? Let's just kind of think through that in the next little bit that we have together here. So, common misconceptions, you have to start taking your income out at age 65. You know, we just talked about that. You don't have to. You have to purchase an annuity. You don't have to, right? But you can. Remember, GuideStone used to be called the Annuity Board. So you can convert to an annuity. We'll talk about that, but you don't have to. When you die, your spouse gets only half of your assets. I don't know why that's a common misconception, but that's not true, right? If she's your beneficiary in your account, she gets the account. If you converted it to an annuity, it's based on what type of an annuity you purchased. When you both die, your heirs don't receive anything. No, if you have beneficiaries listed and you have not converted to an annuity, they of course get the balance. If you have converted to an annuity, again, it depends on which type of annuity, if you have one that leaves something to heirs or not. So let's talk about it. So we can be proactive. We can, before that day comes, be thinking about it. Think, well, this is probably what we want to do. But then, when you get to retirement, make adjustments, make your best decision at that point, respond to whatever comes up at that point. So the first thing is calculating your retirement income need, and we don't have time to go into depth here, but if you think about it, you can start listing out your expenses that you think you're going to have in retirement, and compare those to what your income sources are going to be. We talked about getting your estimate from Social Security, getting your estimate off your GuideStone account, getting your spouse's retirement estimates. Start listing those out. Maybe it's on a piece of notebook paper, and on the right-hand side, you list that budget where you're giving your dollars what they're going to do every year during retirement. And you compare the two and see if you have a surplus or a shortfall. And so if you do have that, then you've got options. We talked about this a while ago. You could try to reduce your retirement expenses. You could delay retirement. You could try to save more now. That's the maximized retirement savings now, or you could work part-time. So those are kind of the options you have as you calculate what you have. And then after you've done that, understanding and choosing your retirement solution. You won't have to do this until you retire, but it's good to be thinking about it now. So as you start thinking about withdrawals from your account, you've kind of got three choices in the church retirement plan. One is a life income annuity, and we'll talk about that. And the other is systematic withdrawal, and the other would be a combination of both. So those are at its basic, your basic choices there, right? And so a life income annuity, so this is people who want to convert their balance to an annuity or part of their balance. And so an annuity, I like to just think of it kind of simply. It's exchanging my balance or a portion of my balance for a series of monthly payments for life. And so it is a way to make sure I know what I'm getting each month. And it reduces longevity risk because, again, it's for life. So if someone's concerned about running out of their account balance, if they convert to an annuity, then they know exactly what they're dealing with, right? Whatever that number is, they'll know what they're dealing with. So a life income annuity is one option. The other is systematic withdrawal. So a systematic withdrawal means I'm going to keep, hey, how are you guys today? I'm going to keep the funds invested under my control. We talked about asset allocation earlier, so I'm going to keep it invested under my control, and I'm going to withdraw it systematically through my retirement years. A safe withdrawal amount that most financial planners would say is about 4%. Some say 4.5 or 5 if you wait a little longer, but a systematic monthly withdrawal. So a lot of people will choose that option. That keeps it under your control, and you determine what you want to do. And then if you need a chunk of money to take a trip or replace the car, you could actually take another amount out at your discretion. Of course, you want to remember it's taxable, so it would be keep all that in mind and go into it with eyes wide open. But it does give you that flexibility. And then other people do a combination. They will annuitize a part of their balance to have that fixed monthly payment for life for you or for you and your spouse's life, or and they'll keep part of it for systematic withdrawal. So some people do both, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? Convert part of your balance. Yeah. I think we just talked through that. Yeah. Any questions about that? Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier an annuity that would leave something for your heirs. Are you talking about the 20-year guarantee, and if you die before 20, you get the remainder? Is that the annuity you're talking
Yeah, that's one option. So he's asking about annuities that would leave something for an heir, because typically an annuity is payments for life, right? Whether it's joint or single. But there are a couple of options that could potentially leave something for an heir. One is what he mentioned, a 20-year, an annuity with a 20-year period. And so how that one works is, let's say it's joint life with your spouse. Let's say the husband passes away at year 12, the wife passes away at year 15. They had a 20-year period annuity. That leaves 5 years of payments left to be paid out in that annuity. So whoever the beneficiary is in that case would get those payments for 5 more years. Yeah, so that's one way to do it. There's another one called a cash refund. Again, the annuity monthly payment amount is lessened because of it, but it would pay a cash refund if any is left at the end. Mhm.
On the 20-year, that's still a lifetime annuity. If you outlive the 20 years, you keep getting it.
That's right. It's not just an annuity for 20 years. Yes. His question is it still life? Yes, it is. Just if you happen to both pass away within 20 years, you're planning to leave something for somebody else. Yeah. So it's kind of a little bit of a compromise there. Yeah. All right. Our next time is 11:15. Is that right, Ron?
Yeah, you can stop.
So,
There's some questions. And then
yeah,
we're
I think maybe
move on to 11.
I was going to go a little further, but I think I'll use this as a stopping point. So maybe take a couple more questions and then we'll
Yeah.
stop. Is that good? Is that what you want to do?
We'll start in about 50 minutes.
Okay. So do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you can have a couple more questions. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So he says I can have a couple more questions. So there you go. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is there any thought about what COVID is gonna do to the stock market?
Yeah, and I was going to talk a little bit about the market after lunch, but it's been quite interesting that the market has took a hit based on its what happened and its reaction to the news, and then it has rebounded amazingly. And there's been a lot of things that have made that downturn that we had this spring a lot different, say, than a downturn back in 2008. And so if we have time after lunch, I'll walk through some of those pieces. Yeah, that's a good question. But the market has come so far back. It is, well past where it was. And in generally speaking, it reacted pretty favorably to the news that the vaccine was fairly imminent. And it has reacted fairly favorably to the balance of power that is thought to be probable in the next year now. So, yeah, but can't say what it's going to do, right? We just don't know. Yeah. It has certainly been a force, though, this year.
So drawing all of these, drawing whatever retirement you plan to do, when you talk about taxing, that's based on the tax code, right? That's what you're referring to.
Right. Yeah. So the question was about taxes and not knowing what in the future might happen to the tax code. What will income brackets? What can be excluded from tax and not? All those things. We don't. They're just unknowns.
The big one for us, I guess, is the housing allowance, whether that continues to be available.
Yeah. Yeah, the housing, a big one, a big tax benefit, right, for ministers. And so let me say one thing about it, and then I'll address kind of what you're alluding to. The housing allowance is a wonderful thing during our employment years, right, during our growing years and building years. But it's a huge benefit in retirement too for ministers, right? So at GuideStone, we're a denominational pension board. So in case you did not know, when you get to retirement and you start your withdrawals, we were just talking about these various forms of withdrawals, and you'll call in and you'll say, I'm about ready to take my withdrawals, and I'd like to set up my annuity or my systematic withdrawal. They're going to say, well, are you an ordained minister? You're going to say yes. They're going to say, well, would you like to designate a housing allowance? And you're going to smile and say yes. Right? Yeah, so it's a great benefit all through retirement too for an ordained minister to receive a housing allowance from the denominational pension board. So to your point, there was some question about it some time back. It was defeated the last time handedly. The military are sort of grouped into this housing allowance thing, and I think that may help. So we don't know of anybody combating it at the moment anyway. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Housing allowance in retirement, if you do not have a house payment, how is that affected?
So if you don't have a house payment, so maybe many of you are making it your goal to pay the house off, right, by retirement, so you'll have fewer expenses, which is a great goal. It's probably the biggest chunk of your housing expenses, but you still have a lot of housing expenses even in retirement. So nothing changes about the housing allowance calculation, the test. It's still the lower of the three things: what you designate, what your actual expenses are, or the rental value furnished plus utilities, right? So it's still going to be the lesser of those three. So in retirement, You might not have a house payment, but you replace the roof every so often, you'll have utilities every month, you'll have yard maintenance, you'll have whatever the things are that constitute your housing allowance today, minus principal and interest, I'd say. Yeah, good point. That's right.
On housing allowance, do I understand this correctly, that the housing allowance exists only as long as the minister lives and not his spouse?
That is my understanding, yeah. There's a little piece GuideStone put out that mentions that it's inconceivable that it's likely inconceivable that the IRS would say that someone other than the minister could enjoy that tax benefit, I think is how it's worded, but that is my understanding too, yeah. But all right, well, Ron, this is a good spot to break. How about that? Okay, thank y'all.
Before you guys turn off virtually, I've got a couple of really important announcements. First of all, art is going to be available at the MSBA office. There's a few slots available if you want to call the office to see him today. There's about a 30-minute window that he has that he can just share personally with you. Look at your account. The time slots still open are 3:30, 4:30, 5, 5:30, and 6. And the rest of the times are taken, so don't ask about those.
Just let them sign up on that sheet.
And we have a sheet that you can sign up here if you're present. And if you're calling virtually, we'll figure that out, okay? Also, this is a great announcement. Mid-South Baptist Association is wanting to invest $50 in 25 pastors who are not a part of GuideStone. So if you're here today, or if you're listening virtually, and you are a pastor affiliated with Mid-South Baptist Association, and you're not a part of GuideStone, the first 25 of you who contact the office and talk to us, we want to give you $50, okay? Merry Christmas. But that's for GuideStone sign up, okay? So that's about it. We're going to start up again around 12 o'clock. Those of you who are listening virtually, and for those of you who are staying, we're going to break for lunch now, and we'll see you again in a little bit later, okay? Brother David.
I was going to share a quick testimony related to, I got a call last week from an evangelist friend of mine, pastored many churches and been in evangelism for a number of years, revivalism more so. You all, I don't know that you know him, some of you might. He doesn't live in this area. But he called me, I didn't know that his wife had passed away this year, I think in February, and I did. So he FaceTimed me the other day. He moved from Miami now to Colorado Springs, and when his wife passed away, she'd been investing. They didn't start Social Security until they were 75. She died at 91, and unbeknown to him, but he didn't keep up with it. In addition to whatever he invested, that's the guy's done. She had been investing in stocks, and he said, "No, this is just for you, but I'm going to go to." She invested about $650,000. But she didn't get to live it. Wow. And I thought, at 91, she obviously you live pretty comfortably.
Right.
So anyway, he's in an assisted living facility now. It's really nice. They're near his son. He's moved from Miami, being near his son.
Wow.
So that's good fellowship with a
Great.
faithful servant of the Lord that has been a pastor and evangelist revivalist, and we try to stay connected.
That's great.
Fellowship with him. Had a great impact on my life and the churches that I've served. Fellowship.
Thanks for sharing, Dave. Sean, would you offer thanks for
Can I share?
Sure, Jim.
just one real
Yeah, go
quick?
ahead.
Some of you know, my mother-in-law just recently passed away. She passed away on Saturday. She was a pastor's wife for more than 50 years. A father-in-law pastored in Texas, Panhandle of Texas, and Central Texas area. And my mother always pastored small churches, never made a lot of money, but they were on the receiving end of GuideStone's mission giving.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It's one of the finest things we as Southern Baptists have ever done.
That's right.
On her behalf, I want to say thank you for your contributions to missions giving.
Man, that's a good word, Jim. Okay. Let's stand together. Pray. Sean? Let us-
All right. God, we just thank you for what we're hearing today, and we apply it, and continue to just bless our families, dear God, as we walk forward, give us wisdom and understanding, and just bless all these pastors that's in this room, that's here and online. Dear God, we pray. We just thank you for the food we're about to receive, the nourishment of our body. We pray in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. It's art. Good job. Help yourself.